In the summer of 2000, I was giving a speech to a group of people called Spiritual Frontiers Foundation International. And they have a conference once a year to discuss how they as a group can help our society evolve spiritually. They're very well educated, very wonderful, very committed people. So I'm in the middle of the speech, and a friend of mine had asked me to give a speech on, it's called How the Money Works on Organized Crime. And it later became an article called Narco Dollars for Dummies. And so I'm in the middle of the speech, and I'm describing the fact that the Department of Justice a year before had told a reporter that I work with that the U.S. economy launders $500 billion to $1 trillion of all dirty money. So that's narcotics trafficking, that's tax evasion, that's financial fraud. With financial fraud, it's much bigger now. So I said to this wonderful audience of spiritually evolved people, what would happen if we stopped? And there's a little sort of conversation, and they said, well, you know, our mutual funds would go down because that $500 billion to $1 trillion wouldn't come into the stock market, you know, go to London or Zurich or Hong Kong. And we'd have trouble financing the government deficit because we need to borrow all this money to finance. So our taxes might go up or our government checks might stop. And I said, okay, well, let's pretend there's a big red button up here on the lectern. And if you push that button, you can stop all hard narcotics trafficking in your city, your county, your state, your country tomorrow, thus offending the people who control $500 billion to $1 trillion a year of money laundering through the U.S. financial system and the accumulated reinvested capital thereon over the last umpteen years. Who here will push the button? And out of 100 people dedicated to evolving our society spiritually, guess how many would push the button? One. So I said to the other 99, why would you not push the button? And they said, we don't want our government checks to stop, we don't want our taxes to go up, and we don't want our mutual funds to go down. So that's the conundrum. Because if you look at the American financial system, we have created through force, you know, it's called the central banking warfare model. The central bank prints paper, and then the military makes sure that everybody takes it while they're extracting the natural resources for cheap, right? Okay, so the tapeworm economy is not just in America. The tapeworm is extracting a subsidy all around the world. And until 2008, most Americans were the beneficiary of that. Now, you can say most Americans were naive. If you look at every county in America, one of the biggest businesses in every county is narcotics trafficking. Illegal drugs targeted at the children that makes everyone money. Okay? And then the government has huge war on drugs, and that makes a lot of other people money. So one of the biggest industries in America is the genocide of the children of our neighbors. That puts us, as a people, across the line.
Okay, Nana reporting in gunship Nana from the active theater. There's Thogman over there in our support gunship, an Apache AH-64 codenamed Cochise, on a nice day for flying into the tribal regions of Afghanistan. I thought it important to give you a grasp of the scale of opium production along every river and tributary in this world-class drug-producing country. The pre-invasion opium yields of 3,500 tons per year is now more than 6,000 tons. And you can add to that another 300 tons of cannabis coming out of these well-protected enclaves of drug production of the City of London livery resource monopoly companies. The scale of the players orchestrated on the world stage by the livery guilds is in such a clever way as to provide a nice helicopter for us to take, unauthorized, I might add, into their very production fields to have a look for ourselves. I am out of the gunner's seat this trip to give you a view up here of the amount of fields under cultivation in this highly illegal overflight. Just remember, what you're about to see only represents 1/10,000th of the production of this crop. To the main production and export region of Helmland province in the south of the country. It has the highest security risk because it's also by far the lion's portion of the opium and heroin export trade. Being in the south of the country, it's also poised for the easiest and longest unsecured coastline for smuggling. Not only out of the country. An interesting discovery would be made if companies supplying the processing chemicals for heroin production were revealed. Because tons of opium are being processed, hundreds of train car tank cars worth of liquid and powdered precursor shipments must be moving into the country. there's so much heroin traffic to be moving out of it. But the area is also located in one of the richest deposits of new mineral-rich soil each year, from the melt of snow and ice from the eastern mountain winter snow. Every winter, huge snowpacks melt in the spring and move tons of fine mineral-rich earth down the valleys into the steppes of the south. But the depth of the aquifer allows for year-round wells, and along this river it means opium production in the harshest of conditions. In the hacked radar image sweep, what looks like a vibrant agriculture industry is in fact all opium. Wherever irrigation can grow an acre, it is tapped and planted. This nation buys imported food. It is only growing opium, and it's growing a ridiculous amount now. As you look out over my shoulder, this is not Holland. This is heroin on the streets of New York, or London, or Los Angeles. These flowering acres are acres of opium poppies, in flower, in bulb, being milked, being harvested. And it's not just one region, it's all regions. Although they may be unable to exploit the vast aquifer of the Helmand or the north, the entire country plants opium. It almost leaves you in awe of how breathtakingly wrong it all is.
I keep coming back to this valley and this crop. This is certainly a descendant of one of the varieties imported from Kew Gardens in England after opium was collected in the wild, brought to Kew, and selectively bred to promote high-yield resinous strains. These were then reintroduced into the Indian Empire, an empire that included the now Golden Triangle Asian production and the Pakistan-Afghanistan Western Golden Crescent. In fact, all drug routes were and are still co-located in former colonial holdings, exploited by the livery guild companies of the City of London and the Crown of England. Although the financial arrangement has changed somewhat, this business is still conducted for the benefit of the guilds that now handle the former holdings of the former Honorable East India Company. Only the names have been changed to protect the guilty.
In the backdrop, there's a third agenda, which to me is the most important agenda in the mix on healthcare reform. And that agenda is the desire to have much greater control. Okay? Now, you can say it's the government, but in fact, if you look at who really controls and operates and runs the government, it's not the government. It's very powerful private interests behind the government. You know, some people call it the shadow government, but you know, there are groups behind that. And if you look at the provisions that have been discussed for controlling doctors, dictating to doctors what their policies will be, requiring disclosure to the government of all sorts of confidential private information about people and their health, you're looking at one of the most effective tools to implement fascism that I've ever seen. Now, let's go back. If you and I were to walk into Washington and say, oh, we have these 21 agencies, we have the Department of Housing and Urban Development, we have the Department of HHS, Health and Human Services, we have the military, we have all these different agencies. You would see lots of different agencies. That's not what I see. What I see is 3 defense contractors who control and operate the databases and the IT systems for all 21. So I don't see 21 agencies. I see Lockheed Martin. Okay, I see DynCorp. I see, and they have the data. They have this data and this data and this data and this data and this data. Okay, now let me step back in time. Edwin Black wrote a magnificent book on the Holocaust about IBM helping the Nazis build the database operation they needed to implement the Holocaust. Okay. Now, who's just been chosen as one of the lead contractors on our census? IBM, okay, and Lockheed Martin, I believe. So if you look at all the databases they have from around the country already, and you combine those databases with the data that could come from the healthcare bill on everybody's personal health information and their accurate address, what have you got? You've got the basis, you know, you have the equivalent in 2010 of what the Nazis had to do the Holocaust. You know, God forbid you should combine that with a national ID card, okay? But you're basically you're turning over to a small handful of private, powerful interests, you know, a complete database on this country that, combined what they have through the banking and other systems, is unbelievably phenomenal. And you layer on top of that artificial intelligence. Now, at the heart of any health situation, you have a patient and a doctor. And the thing that most protects that patient is the oath that doctor takes. That doctor's ethical commitment is to do whatever is in your interest. So if I'm in an emergency room and I'm trying to save your life, I don't think, well, you know, giving you this shot of adrenaline is more expensive than you can afford. My obligation is to save your life. When you fundamentally re-engineer the government rules and regulations so that they supersede that oath, then you're talking about creating a world in which your power as a citizen is radically diminished, because I'm cutting off from you the information and resources you need to make wise decisions about your health. Now, we're talking about health care. That change is happening across the board. The IRS is requiring tax preparers to enroll in, you know, with the IRS and become not your tax preparer with ethical obligations to you, but their enforcement arm. You know, so it's your doctor, it's your tax preparer, it's your accountant. All across the board, the professionals that you use in every aspect of your life are suddenly having their regulatory structure re-engineered so that person's ethical obligation is to the government and not you. And what that means is you can then be literally at the most intimate levels of your life and your finances. Your whole life can be engineered to serve the corporations and not you.